Okay, Namaskaram. And we will start our session after a gap of 2-3 weeks. Chaturmukha Samarambham Vakbhadacharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryandam Vande Guru Parambaram Ragadirogan Sadadanushaktan Sheshakaya Prasrudan Sheshan Aulsukya Moha Haradidan Jakhana Yopurva Vaidyaya Namostu Tasmai. In our last session, we were trying to understand the Ashraya-Ashrayi relation in a better manner and understand the dhadus from that perspective. And we explained Rasadhadu and Rektadhadu also. We made some observations regarding why the Rakta and Asthi are different. Out of the 7, Asthi gives the shelter to Vayu and Rakta gives Ashraya to it is the shelter is not the right word. It is more like, I think the most preferred word for me in that context is niche. It is not shelter. It is a optimally identified workspace or something like that. And how Rekta is becoming the niche of Pitta. Those two aspects we explained, and we also saw the nature of Rasadhatu and how does it deliver the prenana, the karma of prenana. Now, we will proceed with the next dhadus. See, coming to Mamsa, Mamsa is the first well-established or well-manifested sneha in the list of 7 dhadus. It is the well-established sneha. It has Prithvi first and Jala second in its configuration. This is purely an assumption and just a hypothesis. See, the technique what I have resorted or used in making these sort of statements is purely observational, not experimental. So how does each dhadu behave in a clinical situation? And how does each dhadu respond to a clinical intervention? And whatever is told in the Samhitas about their nature or their behavior. So based on or taking leads from all this information, I'm just putting forward a hypothesis. That's all. It is not an experimentally proven idea. So when I say that Mamsa has Prithvi first and Jala second in its configuration, it is purely based on that idea. And Agni, Vayu and Akasha stay very less active in Mamsa. And it has a reasonably good density and durability in its snigdhata. So that is how it possesses the ability to do the karma of lepana. Lepana is the dharma attributed to Mamsa Dhatu. Specifically, of course, the list can be more long. I am coming to that. At least in the case of one or two, we have to go through those detailed list of dharmas or karmas. Specifically, Mamsadhadu delivers the karma of Lepana. Lepana is a word having multiple shades of meaning. Anointing, plastering, spreading on. These are all possibilities. Then sometimes the as noun like mortar or ointment. These are also meanings of lepana. Lepanam as a material. The act of cementing, see, mortar is doing that work. The act of cementing or smearing, these two things are quite relevant in our context of understanding Mamsa. And interestingly, Lepana by word has a direct meaning of meat or flesh. So that is also important in our context. Because Mamsa Dhatu contributes in the making of the fleshy bulk of Sharira. So that way, Mamsa is rightly attributed with the function of Lepana. Now, Medas. As I mentioned earlier, these are all niche of Shleshma. Mamsa is the niche of Shleshma. Medas is a niche of Shleshma. So, it is when we say that, okay, Shleshma, Shesheshu, that is a highly generalized statement. Shleshma, Shesheshu, because they have some sort of a commonality that they are all needs of Shleshma, but at the same time, each one is unique. Each one is unique. They have the commonality that they are all Snigdha. They have the commonality that they all can accommodate Shleshma. But each unit is unique. Each one is assigned with very unique functions. So that should be there always in our minds. Shleshma Shesheshu is a overgeneralized statement for some reason, from a particular perspective. Then, coming to Medas. Medas is finer in terms of its snigdhata. But when compared with Mamsa, that snigdhata is less dense and durable. It's less dense and less durable. At the same time, that less does not go to the extent of rasadhadu. So, Medas is not a short-lived dhadu like rasa. But it is not as compact as Mamsa. This is also because of very unique Bhuda configuration. It is Jala predominant with the liberal support of Prithvi, but the presence of Agni is very crucial in Medas. presence of Agni is very crucial in Vedas. That makes it less sthira, and vulnerable to the attack of Ushna. And another advantage is that because of this less sthira form, it is more freely available all across. Medas is more freely available all across. The other two bhutas are very feebly present there. It delivers the function of snehana. Snehana means the act of keeping stuffs anointed or lubricated. But when we say that it keeps the stuff anointed, it has many possibilities to visualize. Taking a piece of plastic and applying some oil on its surface is an anointing, is making it lubricated. But that is not going to change the stuff of that plastic material anyway. Anybody can come and wipe off that anointed stuff from its surface. That is not what Snehana is doing with the Medas. So it is not about just applying some Sneha on a dry stuff, but it is about maintaining the very stuff wet and moist within, and thus preventing rukshata settling inside. So that way, the snehana done by Medas is so crucial, so important. So that is about Medas. And Medas very, very wholeheartedly provides a niche for Shleshma. Shleshma will be so happy to reside with Medas. We have already seen the nature of Asti earlier. Now, one of the most important discussion that we have to make is about Majja. Majja is having Prithvi and Jala as its main components, and Agni has a countable presence in it. Whereas Vayu and Akasha are less dominant. Its snigdhata is so fine and extremely sukshma. But at the same time, it is quite compact or thick set. Snehana in Majja is thick set. So it is not a soft target. It is not an easy stuff to get disintegrated fast. It is supposed to be a Gambhira Dhatu, a very deeply seated Dhatu in the distribution pattern. The Samhitas assign Majja with the karma of Asthipurana. It fills the asthis, which has numerous hollow spaces inside. Asthipurana. Personally, I always felt that this is a statement which deserves further scrutiny, because the idea that the whole function of one dhatu, a highly evolved sneha, is just to fill the hollow spaces of an avayava sounds so silly to accept. Definitely, it should have more specific karmas to deliver. We have to discuss it. I think we will come to it, at least some idea as a food for thought. By nature, for all obvious reasons, Majja provides a very comfortable niche to the Sneha predominant Kabhadosha. No wonder in it. Majja is also a well-established form of Sneha. We find Majja as one among the Sneha yonis. Sarpir Majja Vasatailam Sneheshu Pravaram Matam. So, as one among the 4 types of Sneha yonis in the context of Snehapana Chikitsa, we extract Majja for that purpose by breaking fresh bones into pieces and then boiling them in water and then separating the sneha that ooze out from the bones and which spreads over the water. We separate it and dehydrate, remove the water content and make the sneha called Majja. So it seems that Majja is somewhat a well-established dhatu. And someone asked me a personal question in between. It was about the free existence of Majja. Majja dhatu, unlike other dhatus, because earlier we had a discussion. Are dhadus available in the Sharira in their free form, in absolute forms? Generally, dhadus are not available in their free form. They do not exist in their absolute form for long. They exist in that form maybe in the Prathama Matra of their formation. From the Bidiya Matra onwards, they are part of a stream, of a network, of a program, of a condition, of a system, and they engage themselves in multiple activities. Does Majja make an exemption to this rule? That was the question. Because we extract Majja, we use Majja. In my observation, Majja also follows the standard rule. The sneha what we extract as Majja and the sneha which fills the bones in a living Sharira is not Majja alone. In the living Sharira, definitely it has the predominant presence of Majja Dhatu, but it has got Rakta and Medas in it. It has got Rakta and Medas in it. Some acharyas have made some observations in this regard in the Sharirasthana. So you can find it from Acharya Sushruta, from Acharya Vakbhada in Sangraha. But definitely Majja is the most abundant dhadu in it. no doubt. And when you extract after breaking the bones and see taking the sneha out of it, definitely majja is the predominant portion. There is no element of rakta after the refined form is extracted, but definitely there is a share of medas in it. This majja has a very close relation with medas. By convention, it is thought that asthi gives rise to majja. Asthi is the ahara for the majja dhatu, dhadava khelu, dhatva ahara. But medas also can be considered as a principal source or a principal ahara in the making of majja. At least we have to, or we need to consider the idea that medas, asthi, and majja are having some common, complex, intertwined origin. Why making such a comment? While explaining kalas, Acharya Sushruta has made that sort of ideas, which is followed as such by Acharya Vakbhada in Sangraha. I read it like that. I read it like that. Tridiya Medodhara Medohi Sarvabhudanam Udarastham Anuasthishucha Medohi Sarvabhudanam Udarastham Anuasthishucha Mahatsucha Majja Bhavati. So having a common origin from Medodhara Kala, Medas, Asthi and Majja are having some very close relation. I'm not in a position to present the finest details of that relation very clearly. I'm still working on it. But I'm sharing the idea with the hope that this may be a food for thought, as I mentioned earlier, for someone else's buddhi. Now, regarding majja, I think we have to discuss one more point today. Earlier, I just mentioned that majja can have more specific karmas to deliver, other than simple asthi purana. In Acharya Sushruta's explanation regarding the dhatu karmas, we find a detailed version. We find the same detailed version in Sangraha also. Rasastushtim prenanam raktapushtim chakaroti raktam varnaprasadam mamsapushtim jivayadi cha mamsam sharirapushtim medasascha medah snehasvedau dridhatvam pushtimasthanam cha asthini dehadharanam majnah pushtim cha majja sneham balam shukrapushtim puranamasthanam cha karoti. Shukram dhairyam chyavanam preetim dehabalam harsham bijartham cha. So, Majja, Sneham, Balam, Shukrapushtim, Puranamasthanam Chakarodi. Shukram, Dhairyam, Chavanam, Preetim, Dehabalam, Harsham, Bijartham Cha. So here we find some additional karma attributed to each dhatu. All are important points, but up to Majja, it was not essential to discuss them in detail because those one point explanation like Prenanam, Jivanam, Lepa, Sneho, Dharanapur, that itself was nice. But coming to the Asthipurana Dharmam of Majja, it does not sound that nice. So here we look at the Majja and we find Sneham and Balam as two duties additional to Puranamasthanam. That is one point where we have to work further on. So, we know that our existence in full has four quarters. I'm not going to the details because everybody knows it. Sharira, Indriya, Sattvatma. This is a fundamental understanding in Ayurveda. And of these, Sharira is Panchabhautika, whereas Atma is not. On one end, Sharira is Panchabhautika. On the other end, Atma, which is not Panchabhautika. These two things are taken for granted. The case of the remaining two, that is Indriya and Manas, that case is to be understood with some extra care and enthusiasm. Bhutas on one end, Buddhi on the other end is the picture that we get with two principles, Indriya and Manas, placed in between. In this sequence, Indriyas tend to stay towards the Bhutas and Manas towards the Atma more. Their identity is always debated on. Indriyas are whether Bhautikas, Manas is Bhautika. There are different opinions. Indriyas are Ahankarika, Manas is Ahankarika. But in Ayurveda, Asmin Shastre, Indriyas are considered as Bhautika. So Ahankarika or Bhautika, if it is Ahankarika, how do you manipulate it with medicines? If it is Bhautika, how can you explain their origin that way? How do they associate with Buddhi? So there are issues, there are debates all the time, but from a very neutral point of view, Indriyas have got a tendency towards the Sharira. Manas has got a tendency towards Atma. But definitely they are all attached to the Sharira and hence never go out of the clutches of Panchabhuta. The only principle that is kept aside is the Jiva Tattva, the Atma, the Shariri. We all know that these Indriya and Manas are quite important units of existence. Now there is a question. How do they get nourished? Atma do not get any nourishment from Bhuta Gunas. Bhutas cannot nourish Atma. Sharira needs or gets nourished by Bhutas because Sharira is purely Bhautika. How about Indriyas? How about Manas? How do Indriyas are nourished? How does Manas is nourished? Do these principles seek or accept nourishment at Bhuta level? There are many discussions. Even in the Upanishads, we find this sort of that Uddalaga, Shvetaketu discussion and all. I think yes, these principles seek and accept nourishment at the Bhuta level. At the brim of the routine dhatu nourishment preferences, which are purely bhuta to bhuta. Generally, it is bhuta to bhuta. That is the standard transformation. So here Sharira uses the finest forms of sneha in its reserve to nourish indriyas and manas. These snehas, I propose or I make a statement that the snehas required for the nourishment of indriyas and manas are derived from two dhadus, Majja and Shukra. Meantime, two earlier dhadus like Rasa and Rakta, they also nourish the Indriyas and Manas. So in total, we find four. Rasa and Rakta from the Uttana belt, Majja and Shukra from the Gambhira zone. What is the difference? Rasa and Rakta work in a more peripheral manner, but in a very rapid manner. More something like at the level of the Poshaka or Asthai levels of Indriya Pravritti and the Manas. Whereas Majja and Shukra supporting the Poshya part or the Sthai part of Indriyas and Manas. I know that statement is a little bit vague and conflicting, but I hope that is worth pursuing, worth thinking further, exploring further. So that way, the Purana of Majja is not just about Asthi Purana. It goes beyond that. It is the Tarpana of Indriyas and Manas. It is not just about Asthi Purana, which is again based purely on clinical background, clinical observations that I am making this statement, not on an experimental with a experimental background. Shukra is also working on that plane, which I think we will try to discuss in our next session. With that, I think as the time has come, we conclude today. So before that, I will see what is that. There are a couple of points in chat box. Please help to understand what is Kala, how to imagine the Kala if possible. I do hope to come to the concept of Kala as I understood it later, because now we have reached from the broad explanations and multiple types of explanations regarding dosha, we have slowly entered into dhatu. We will discuss about srotas, kala and all those things as and when the time permits, definitely. How they act as creators of certain dhatus. We will come to it. So thank you so much. And I think today we will conclude. I'm not very sure whether we will have a session next week. If not, happy Christmas to all of you and a very wonderful happy new year. Thank you so much. Bhishajam sadhu vrittanam bhadramagamacharinam abhyasta karmanam bhadram bhadram bhadrabhilashanam. Namaskaram.